In 1968, a science fiction film that was directed by Franklin Schaffner hit the big screen. That film was Planet of the Apes. It stars Charlton Heston, Roddy McDowall, Kim Hunter, Maurice Evans, James Whitmore, Linda Harrison, and James Daly. Michael Wilson and Rod Serling wrote the screenplay for the movie. The story is about an astronaut crew that crash on a strange planet in the distant future. The surviving crew members stumble upon a society in which apes have evolved into creatures with human-like intelligence. The apes have assumed the role of the dominant species, and the humans are delegated to the animal roles. It was originally thought by the studios and also by the book's author that it would make a terrible movie. It's thought that apes, especially talking ones, were stuff of B-movies back in the 1960s, so nobody really took the script seriously. When the producer was trying to shop the script to different studios, he ran into this exact problem. He ran into rejection everywhere he went. But it actually took a makeup test to convince 20th Century Fox to actually produce the movie. Richard Zanuck with 20th Century Fox decided to take a look at the possibility of the film. He had one reservation and concern, and his thought was that people might laugh at the makeup. Up to that point, the on-screen apes that you saw in television and movies were either real monkeys or people in flimsy costumes. He knew that the movie would not work without the perfect makeup. The producer shot a makeup test to convince Zanuck, and he did this complete with the star Charlton Heston, who played George Taylor, and they used Edward G. Robinson. He was later dropped from the film, and he was in full ape getup. This makeup test ended up costing $5,000 to shoot, but the test impressed Zanuck, so much so that they squashed the fears that he had about the look of the apes. He agreed to give the director and the producer $5 million to get Planet of the Apes started. At the height of the movie's production, it actually required around 100 makeup artists and wardrobe workers and hairstylists to be on the set to get all of the apes in their costumes to be ready for shooting. Some of the bigger scenes that they had around 200 actresses and actors in their full ape garb. All of this required hours of work. The whole makeup process was done like a well-oiled machine. Sometimes the makeup artists were working around the clock, day and night, to actually craft some of the individual ape pieces. Now, the man that was behind all the ape makeup and behind all the design in the construction of the ape makeup was John Chambers. He controlled the entire crew of makeup artists that handled the production for Planet of the Apes. He was one of the premier creature effect artists in Hollywood. He had been working in sci-fi and fantasy shows like The Munsters, The Outer Limits, and Lost in Space. But you will probably know him best from his work on Star Trek, and he's the one that came up with Spock's pointed ears in the original TV series. He got his start working after World War II and during World War II, making prosthetics and facial restorations for soldiers that were wounded in combat. Now, Rod Serling did major writing on the script of Planet of the Apes. He spent a whole year trying to adapt this. They wanted to use a lot of his script, but they just weren't able to do it. And the reason was because of money. His scripts featured ape society as a real technologically advanced society, with apes driving cars, piloting helicopters, and conducting ape business in skyscrapers. The thought of this would make the production of this film's budget blow up significantly. The production scaled things back to make the apes in a more primitive society, where they rode on horseback and lived in cities that could be constructed as less expensive sets. When the production originally started, it took upwards of 6 hours to put an actor in full ape makeup, including the hair, the brows, the ears, mouth, and hands. Eventually, they were able to streamline the process as work progressed. Chambers and his staff basically created an assembly line that had eventually got the process whittled down to just a little bit over 3 hours per character. Charlton Heston was desperately sick during much of the film with flu-like symptoms. Rather than wait for him to get better, the producers felt that his hoarse voice would actually add something to the character of Taylor. Now, Charlton Heston's character is listed in the credits as George Taylor, but the name George is never actually seen or heard in the film. He's always referred to as Taylor in the production. In filming, the director deliberately used odd and skewed angles, often with handheld cameras, to create a disorienting effect, much like what Charlton Heston's character would experience in this new world. It's said that during the hunt scene, Charlton Heston was completely unclothed during this, and he ran through all sorts of poison oak that was undergrowth at Fox Century Ranch where it was being filmed. The early scenes in the movie where the spaceship crash lands in the lake were all filmed at Lake Powell, which is formed by the dam on the Colorado River on the Utah-Arizona border. The film was actually shot between May 22nd and August of 1967. But due to the stifling summer heat, all 4 sequels were wisely shot during the winter months. Can you imagine having to wear one of these costumes all day in the summer months? The original script called for all the female native humans to be walking around bare-breasted. This idea was squashed by Fox to appease the censors. One of the more strange side effects of having a cast of humans in complete ape garb occurred at lunchtime on the set. It was really subconsciously that the cast 8 divided down species lines. The human actors, the chimpanzees, the orangutans, and the gorillas all fell in line together, and they were basically self-segregating, and they ate with their own kind. All the actors and producers were just as confused as anyone else by it, and Charlton Heston even said that he had no explanation for it whatsoever. It just happened. Everything was self-segregating. The separate groups almost didn't communicate with the other groups. If it was a different species, you didn't eat with them or you didn't talk to them. Nobody could figure it out. It is one of the interesting and peculiar side effects that happened in this movie. In 1969, there wasn't actually an Oscar category for achievement in makeup, but John Chambers' work was so good on Planet of the Apes and went way above the industry standard that it had to be recognized in some way. The Academy decided for an honorary Oscar for outstanding makeup achievement be presented to him at the 41st Academy Awards. He was introduced to the crowd by Walter Matthau, but the real star was the chimpanzee that was decked out in a tux that handed Chambers his award. How cool is that? Compared to the blockbusters of today, Planet of the Apes ends on a bit of a downer. We learn that humanity is lost as Earth has been destroyed, with only the crumbling image of the Statue of Liberty left to remind us of this once grand civilization. This was a very well done movie, considering the things that they had to work with at the time, realizing that they didn't have computer-generated artistry that they have today. Take a look at this film again. You might enjoy it. I watched it recently, and it brought back a lot of memories from that time. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.